look like this. The back will have the zipper and then the slit. And then our measurement is here: waist to hip 7 inches, skirt length 23 inches, circumference waist 32, hip circumference 40. So we'll go on the fabric to cut and measure now. I'm going to be folding into 2. Remember that your circumference measurement will be dividing by 4. Okay, so I'm going to get my length for the skirt, which is 23 inches. 23 inches. So you'll be adding 1.5 inch seam allowance to the 23 inches. So that is 24.5. So you mark that at the top. 24.5. So you connect the point with a ruler. And then now I'll be measuring the waist to hip. The waist to hip here is 7 inches. Remember that we'll be using 1/2 inch to turn our lining at the skirt band. So you measure 7.5 at the hip point there. So for the circumference on the waist, it is 32 inches. When you divide 32 by 4, you get 8 inches. So on the waistline, you add 2.5 inches seam allowance. The 0.5 is there, 2.5 is there so that we would fix our darts. We'll be sewing our darts on the waistline. So the circumference on the hip is 40 inches. Divide 40 by 4, you get 10. So I'll be marking 10 inches on the hip plus 2 inches seam allowance. Now at the base of the skirt, you will also be putting the hip measurement there. So what do we have here in total? We have 12 inches. So you put 12 inches at the base of the skirt. That's the M line. Now because this is a pencil skirt, let me show you. This is a pencil skirt. So we're going to be slanting in from the hip to the hemline. There must be a slant so that it can look shapy. So I'm going to be subtracting 1.5 inches from there. 1.5 inches from there, so that I can have that fish effect, that pencil effect, like this. If you don't want it too pencil, too shapy, you can remove just 1 inch from that point. Then you take your hip curve and then you get a perfect curve at the hip line this way. So on the waistline, we're going to be measuring for the darts. So you get your bust span. Bust span for this skirts, for this dress, the owner of this dress, let's use 7 inches. So 7 inches divided by 2 is 3.5. You mark 3.5 here. And then you add 1/2 inch for the sewing of the darts. So the length of the darts will be 4.5 inches. 4.5 inches. Like this. So you connect your darts like that. And then you're going to be slanting in on both sides of the dart. Both sides of the dart. So this is what we'll be taking in at the waistline. So when you're done cutting the front bodice, the front block of the skirt, you fold another piece of fabric and then you place this on, you place the front pattern on that piece of fabric for the back. So you include your 2 inches zipper allowance there, and then you cut out that shape for the back. This now, so you'll be slashing the back. This is the front, this is the back. You'll be slashing the zipper allowance like this. So now we're cutting our lining the same way, but reduce. So we'll be sewing the straight skirt now, the straight pencil skirt. Now the first thing you do on your skirt is to sew the darts. You can see the darts taking 1/2 inch together, so 1 inch has left the band here. So this is for the back bodies. I've sewn my darts now. So the same darts you sewed on the fabric, you make sure you sew it on the lining. I've sewn that on my lining. So now I'll be putting the stay, interfacing. This one is the paper stay, so I would iron that on the rough part of the paper stay is the one that faces the wrong side of the lining. So by the time you gum, it stays on it like this. So we'll do the same thing for both the back and the front bodies. So now I'll be sewing like this. The part that has the stay has become my wrong side on the lining. So the other part, the opposite part is the right side. So you'll be placing the right side of the lining on the right side of the fabric. So at this point, I would join at the waist. I'm going to be joining 1/2 inch at the waist for both my back bodies and the front bodies. So I'll show you when I'm done sewing. So now I've sewn 1/2 inch at the waistline. Now remember that your lining is shorter than the fabric. So what do? You're going to place both edges together of the lining and the fabric. So for the 2 pieces for the back and then the front piece, you are going to do it exactly the same way. So I'll be sewing 1/2 inch on the M line here. So now I've pulled my lining to the edge of the fabric and I've sewn 1/2 inch. So now you're going to align your fabric together, the lining and the fabric together, and so you can see that there's a turn up here of 1/2 inch. We've turned it up with 1/2 inch. So that's the beauty of using your lining to turn it up. You won't have to be top stitching there. So you're going to pin down that 1/2 inch. Look at this now on the other side. We have the same thing here. Okay, now. So you're going to pin down both the front bodies and the back bodies, and then on the lining here we'll be cutting about 2 inches, the same amount of the paper stay we did here. You can double it for firmness. You can double the layers. I'm going to be doing that on the edges of my M line, and then I would iron that to it, and then I would sew the zipper allowance together, and then a part of the side allowance with 1/2 inch. Remember to sew with 1/2 inch. Then I'll come back to show you what next. Okay, now that I've ironed the paper stay, and then I've sewn 1/2 inch on the zipper allowance, and then 1/2 inch here on the side. Now you can see that I didn't finish sewing up the side, because that is the place I'll use in turning out the the dress like this. You turn it out. Turn it out like this. So this is how you're going to turn out both the 2 sides of the back, the 2 back pieces, and then you can see this is very neat. So this part that is open, you're just going to hold it together like this and top stitch. You top stitch on it. So now I'm going to pin the zipper allowance together for the back bodies, and then I'll show you. So now you take your zipper, use it engaging the length, the opening that you sew the zipper to. So from the edge, just before the stopper there, you will sew a bit. You begin your sewing from above the stopper, and then you're going to sew down. Remember, the remaining allowance for the zipper is 1.5 inches. So you're going to measure your 1.5 inches like this, and then you sew down. So this is for the slit here. The slit here is 5.5 inches. So I'm stopping there. So now that I want to sew my zip, I open up the back bodice like this, open up the zipper, and then turn this in. So you're going to begin, place your zipper away from the edge. It's not directly to the edge, away from it, and then you put in the excess into the allowance here, and then you're going to be sewing down. You're going to be sewing this down. So I'll show you now. See what I'm doing. So I've started sewing. Now when you're getting close to the stopper, you do this way. Can you come closer? You lift up your presser foot, you turn like this, then you take this across. You can decide not to pedal your machine there. You just take it across. Once it passes the joining, you can then lift it up again to turn like this. So you'll be sewing this edge directly to the teeth of the zipper. Be sewing this directly to the teeth of the zipper. Sew directly to the edge. And then you tuck this in to the side like that. So you secure your knot there, and then it is ready. So now you can see that this part overlaps on the other side of the zipper. So this is it. Now you're going to place the front bodice on that point, and then we're going to pin it down. Pin it down. You pin it all the way down. So I like to use the back to do my shaping. So the zipper point has become the center for me to gauge properly. So the waist for this skirt is 32 inches. 32 divided by 4 is 8. So I put the 8 at the middle. I mark it over there, and I mark it here, 32. Now the waist, the hip, waist to hip is 7 inches. Remember we said 7.5, but we've already sewn in the half at the waistline. So that's 7 now. So the hip part is 40 inches. So 40 divided by 4 is 10. You place 10 on the zipper, you mark 10 to the left, and then you mark 20 to the right, like that. Now on the hip line, on the hem line, the hem line, you're going to have the same 40. Remember, it's going to be a pencil skirt, so you remove one from each side of the fabric of the block. So we have 9 inches towards the left, and 9 inches, that's 18 now, towards the right. So that means our hip is 40, while the hem line, the part that there is a pencil, is 38. So we'll be connecting our points together like this. Connect them together. connect them together. Connect this together, and then you're going to sew it down. So I'll be sewing down on the chalk. Okay, so now our pencil skirt is set. This is the waistband here, and then that's the hemline. So you can see that just like the gown we did, the hemline is not going to be top stitched at all. You're just going to have it turned up with your lining. You're going to have it turned up with the lining. So it's just perfect like this. Thanks for watching, and then make sure you try your tutorials and then upload your final results.